BREWtallyspeaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia.com. For over 30 years, Rockabilia has been the go-to destination for all things band merch. With over 500,000 items in their online store and collaborations with today's hottest bands, you're sure to find something you love. Use our code BREW10 at checkout and take 10% off your total order. So go pick up your favorite new piece of merch now over at Rockabilia.com. And now, on to the show.
Say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give up.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the BREWtallyspeaking podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guest is John Cooper of Skillet and Fight the Fury. First of all, I want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. Hopefully you're enjoying your leftovers, your sweatpants, and just time on the couch watching football or going to the movies or whatever it is you do to celebrate the holiday. Hopefully you're enjoying it. I am trying to get this done before the holiday thing happens because I got a house to clean up and prepare to have all the friends over. And then subsequently the next day, which would have been Friday as of when you're listening to this, I'm getting my throat tattooed. And then hopefully I'll have made it to go see Under Oath later that day. We shall see if I make it. The fun thing of doing these a few days before they come out is I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I also don't know how well or not I'm going to be able to talk. Like, I would assume nothing really is going to happen to my throat or my voice, but you don't know. So we shall see. I would at least want to get this done where I can at least move my head and neck freely and not be in pain. So let's get this done. But anyway, this episode's interesting for a multitude of reasons. Last time John came on the show, I didn't do it. It was Dan. Back when I still had Dan as a co-host on this show and, the name change and everything. And, I've kind of been thinking a little bit more about that because there's not been many repeat guests on the show that were repeats and I didn't do. And when I kind of was thinking about that, I realized maybe that was kind of the beginning of something that I realized I've been doing a lot more in my life and feeling more comfortable in. And I kind of had an epiphany, like maybe this is where it sort of was starting. But we had been shopped to have John come on previously when Fight the Fury were putting out their first album. And I knew we were going to talk a little bit about Skillet and stuff like that. And I don't remember the super specifics. Like, part of me remembers that I didn't have the time to take off of work to do it, not even on a lunch break. And Dan did. And then the other thing about it, though, was, and more to the point, was I felt Dan was better suited to do the interview with John. He knew the band from their beginnings all the way to now. And that's something I've kind of learned the power of, is kind of understanding sometimes that maybe you're not the best person to bring out the best in something. And at the time, I honestly thought Dan was going to be that conduit to bring out the best in John, bring out the best for the show. And it's a thing, I've talked about it a lot on the show over the years and maybe not so much recently, but it's a thing when a band has been around as long as Skillet has, that the fandom is so ravenous that you don't want to let them down. And so early into the show, and especially with Dan, I was wanting to put the best foot forward always. And for those types of fans, I wanted them to feel represented and wanted them to feel like it was what they would want to hear in a podcast and a long form chat with, one of their favorite musicians. And to me at the time, like, having Dan do that was going to put our best foot forward. Now, what's interesting is doing it this time, Dan and I are totally different people. We think differently, we have different styles of questions and so forth. And, I was kind of nervous, that I had to live up to, what the bar Dan had set previously. And the other thing that was interesting, and I guess maybe this is a bit of a trigger warning because, this is something else I've also been doing over the years, the last at least 4 or 5. When John and I did this interview, it was 9/11 of this year. And that's kind of the triggering part. I don't know how anyone feels about it, if anything happened to family members or whatever, but, we do talk about the events of 9/11 and where we were and so forth. But that has been kind of an interesting thing, too, for me, is to kind of ask sort of generic questions about the life experiences we've all shared going through the same things. Obviously, with the pandemic, that was a little bit different for everybody. And I just kind of had the epiphany now, but it's like 9/11 was one of the first big collective life events that happened to everybody and had an impact on all of us in one way, shape, or form. And for me, I've really enjoyed getting to hear what people were doing, where they were, what they were thinking, because it was just such a unprecedented event. Obviously, you'll hear, kind of where I was and what was going on, but the stories I've heard from coworkers and friends and family and so forth, and it's just really interesting. I kind of wish sometimes maybe we were a little more apt to share some of these things and just kind of talk about shared experiences, honestly, because I think it's an interesting way to learn about who we are and how we operate as people. All that said, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Let's get into my conversation with John, and I'll talk to you on the other side of it. I don't mean to start things on a somber note. I was just kind of literally kind of perusing around socials and stuff like that to see, if there's something interesting or something that I could bring up to talk with you about. And subsequently ended up kind of finding on my own stuff. It's kind of weird that I didn't think of this upon waking up, but, today, as when we're recording this, is 9/11, and obviously a huge hard part of our history now as a country. It's kind of interesting to read through things that I have kind of written over the years and seeing a lot of friends and family comments on, what they remember. So I feel like I kind of be a little remiss if I didn't ask, where were you and what do you remember about that?
That sounds fine. Absolutely. It's the day for sure. Oh, I'm sorry. You're literally asking me right now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about
no worries.
It's early. I thought, that's the best interview I've ever done, bro. I thought you meant once we start, you're going to ask me. I thought, great, let's do it. Oh. No, okay, let me start over. Yeah, you're right. So we're filming this, of course, and it is 9/11. It's funny because I remember I was sleeping. We had been touring like crazy, and we happened to be at home. And my wife had gotten up early to go to, at the time, her grandmother was still alive, and they used to do these family breakfast things with the girls. It was like 7 a.m. because, it was her grandmother, and her grandmother wakes up at 5:30 or something. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be sleeping in, babe. And I just remember her coming and waking me up and saying, you got to wake up. Really bad things are going on. And me, like a stupid kid, I was like, oh no, is our internet down? Not our internet. like is the Skillet website down? I'm going through all these things. Oh, is there a broken pipe? And she's like, no, like, a terrorist attack, like plane flew into one of the two towers. I was like, what are you talking about? What I really remember most was the sense of people coming together and saying, you know what, we disagree about, who knows, maybe lots of things, tax policies, maybe we disagree about some maybe moral virtues and things like that. But we all of a sudden realize the things that we do agree on, and that at the end of the day, these bedrock values are worth giving your life for, and they are worth believing in. They are worth coming together over. And all of a sudden, the fact that you're arguing about, tax codes, that's not gonna keep you from being friends with somebody and saying we're on the same team. it was a great time. I mean, obviously it was a dark time. It was horrible, but it was a great time to realize that we have some things that we need to unify around. And I think that's one of the interesting things happening in America right now. Not to necessarily jump straight into that, but one of the interesting things is now you have, a lot of people say we really need to unify as a country, but you have to unify around something that's a common principle. Like unifying, just saying everybody, we need unity. When you have no common principles, really all you're saying is everybody be nice. And I think it's great to be nice. It's great to be polite. I love it. But that's not actually unity. You got to unify around something. And what September 11 did, as horrific as it was, I think it made a lot of people go, you know what? There are things that we need to come together on. And if we can hold that together, then we can keep this common union, and I would like to see that again in our country.
Yeah, there's like I said, I don't want to stick on this too long because it's kind of a somber thing, but I think it's interesting to just kind of hear, like you said, it was a very unifying thing. And I think what's interesting is it's one of the few times in, I'll at least say my life, that I remember there being kind of a similar experience where this thing happened and it affected everybody, regardless of age or anything or location. So, I remember it just kind of being this really interesting, weird time. Like I was a senior in high school. We canceled our football game, didn't have practice. It was very uneasy as to what was happening. I remember being told, like, the principal coming in and telling us we couldn't watch it on TVs like all the teachers and such. And most of them obviously fought back and were like, this is news. This is something that these kids are going to have to like probably talk about for the rest of their lives as a very impactful thing, even though we don't know the ramifications of it far reaching yet. And I thought that was kind of interesting how, that was my big takeaway was, the adults are saying that we can't watch this, that we can't handle this or whatever. And I just thought that was really interesting. Like that's how my mind kind of looked at it, was like, whatever's happening is so bad that the adults that are responsible for us right now are like, you can't handle this.
Wow.
And then the teachers like fighting to yeah, sorry.
Super interesting perspective. I would not have thought about that, but I mean, I guess it makes sense because you're trying to decide as a teacher, all right, what point do we do this? But it in my view, it really is necessary. You have to explain to young people the kind of evil there is in the world, because I mean, I think that we've grown up in an amazing country. We're blessed to be here. America is absolutely, it's amazing. And I think that it's easy to take something for granted when you don't know the danger that really could be there and how quickly you really could lose this. You could lose that republic very quickly. You could lose your family. You could lose so many things. And I think it's important to talk about. So I remember it being that as well, even though I wasn't in school at the time. Yeah, September 11. And then I would say, 2020, I think, was the next time that I can think of something being so, oh my gosh, everybody is going through this. Every single, of course, 2020 is different, as every single person in the world is going through this same pandemic, lockdowns. What does this mean for the future? Uncertainty, instability, some people fighting with depression. That was a crazy time. So I think that those events, very different kinds of events, but they had a similar, brought us all to realize we're all going through the same thing, man.
Absolutely. And, it's kind of interesting listening to, Unpopular yesterday and kind of thinking about the events of just everything kind of happening and the world that we live in now. I was kind of thinking, I wonder if that event, like an event like 9/11, sort of becomes the precursor to a lot of things that have happened between then and now that sort of inspires the lyrics to Unpopular. Like, I don't know if there's much of a correlation there, if that's something I'm just reaching for.
Sure. Well, I don't know if I would say necessarily, only except, and I don't think this is a reach, even though I wasn't planning on talking about it, but it's not a reach to think of it philosophically. I would say 2020 definitely is in my mind writing Unpopular. All of a sudden, it's very unpopular to say certain things. Social media, you got getting canceled and things like that. I mean, there were things I said on I've got a podcast that I do, things I said in my podcast in 2021 that got, literally shut down, canceled off of YouTube and stuff for a while. All of those things ended up being accurate and true, and everybody knows they're true now, but there were things you weren't allowed to say then. That sort of comes into the unpopular message. But to say that it's not a stretch because of 9/11, I think that kind of goes down to really what is sort of part of the message on my brand new album that's coming out here called Revolution, is saying, what are those bedrock values going to be? What is it that we can actually get along and say, okay, I'm this, you're this, I think this, and you think this, but what can we actually agree on to where we all stand up for the flag, for instance, for us to say we can live together and we can stand together and fight together. And I'm going to fight. Here's a good example. I'm as close to a free speech absolutist as you can get. All right. And I absolutely fight for someone else's right to say something that I don't agree with, that's going to offend me, that's against my religion, that's against my grandma and my mama, whatever it is, I support that. I think that's a bedrock principle that we cannot let go. So I do think that September 11th, in terms of that, it does have an effect, because I do not remember in 2001, 2005, 6, 7, 8, I do not remember this sort of vitriol, and I don't remember. I mean, do I remember there was a segment of people saying September 11 is our own fault? There was a small segment, but I would not say that segment had tipped over into like the zeitgeist of the country. And I think that what's happened since then is that those voices are getting louder and louder and louder, and so it's kind of changed it. But I don't remember that back then. I think back then people were like, no, we're gonna stand up and we're gonna believe in the same things. It's gonna be good for me and for you, and we can live together and land of the free, man.
Yeah, it's funny, as I get older, like literally today, it'll be 9 days before I turn 40. And so it's kind of hard not to think at times about just the differences of growing up. And even for me growing up, originally out in the East Coast, now I live in the Midwest. So that kind of is a little bit of a culture shock at times. So it just becomes this thing where when you start thinking about your life and what's changed and some of these different things, it gets kind of interesting when you're able to reflect on it, if you're kind of aware of like what's been going on. But it kind of, interestingly, good segue, I guess, is me. But you think about your band itself, been around for coming close to 3 decades, from I think when you guys started. What in that time, what has been maybe a universal truth for you and or the band that kind of has maintained throughout all of it?
Great question. I mean, it is. So this is our 28th year. So that 30th year reunion it's coming fast, and it's such a privilege. I always tell people I'm the luckiest rock singer in the world. I cannot believe we're still around, and a lot has changed. I mean, hopefully not everybody's going to hear this and think, "Oh man, this guy is ancient." But I mean, you got to remember, in 1996 when Skillet started, I mean, the internet was around, but it wasn't like everybody used the internet. That was not a thing. To be honest with you, I had never heard of the internet when we first started. It was my my guitar player. This is hysterical. It makes me look like an idiot, but that's me. I'm authentically I'm myself. So my guitar player at the time, we were releasing our first album in '96, and he goes, "Hey, we need to spend about $1,000 to get a website." And I said, what's a website? $1,000. What's a website? And he starts telling about this thing called the World Wide Web. I was like, that's not real. And I don't know if you remember, I'm a little older than you, but do you remember the film The Net with Sandra Bullock?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And finally I was like, do you mean like the net, like the film? And he's like, yeah, this internet. I was like, that's science fiction, you moron. And he's like, anyway, that's a hysterical story. I could make fun of myself all day. So we spent $1,000, and my guitar player would go on. He'd say, hey, we got these fans coming to the show. They're driving 6 hours from Georgia. And I'd say, how do you know? And he'd go, because they're on the fan page on the website. It just blew my mind. I mean, that's how much things have changed. We didn't have cell phones, and we were driving to festivals using the huge maps, and your map wouldn't be specific enough to take you to the. So then you'd stop at a gas station, sort of like in the film Tommy Boy, and he's like buying the big map. A lot has changed. I mean, the way you make music has changed. It's absolutely incredible. The fact that I got my phone here, and I can go on my phone and I can tweet and say, hey, I'm hanging out with John on Brewtallyspeaking. We can go on there and do that. If I had one of these as a kid and I could find out what like Tommy Lee from Motley Crue was doing every day, I never would have left my room either. I'd be like, oh, what's Lars up to from Metallica? What kind of coffee is Lars having today? So a lot has changed, but that's not the question. The question is, what has stayed the same? There's a lot that stayed the same. Number one, rock fans just don't change. Rock fans are loyal to the core because in my opinion, no other music does for me what rock music does. And that's what rock fans are like. You ask any dude that goes to the gym, and especially from like our generation and the older millennials, what do you want to listen to when you go work out? Metallica, AC/DC, it's all the same stuff. Everybody listens to the same stuff in the workout room. And it's also that way for just dealing with life. That's what rock fans are into, and they want something authentic. They don't want to listen to rock music that isn't real. They want to know what you really believe, and I think that's why rock fans are sort of, I find, very inclusive of what you're singing about. I mean, I'm a good example of that. Most people are aware that I'm quite religious. I'm a Christian. I'm very dedicated to my faith. I listen to tons of bands who do not agree with what I believe when it comes to religion. They may even be singing against my religion, but I'm like, yeah, it's good art. I don't know. I believe them. When they sing what they're saying, I believe it. It's authentic. It's real. And that's what I take to the gym. When I get done with these interviews, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to listen to probably some bands that don't agree with me on stuff because it's real. Those are some of the things I would say that stay the same.
Well, I think in that, you're speaking to something that I've kind of have long believed, and I can say with factuality, which is not a word. But it's a thing where in my time of my wife and I traveling over the last, decade or so of being together, that you start to kind of be able to see more of the world around you, to understand that, the differences that are between us, and sometimes that things you may think are non-negotiables really aren't that big of a deal. And to me, I feel like as you get older, those are the things, like to so blindly believe in something without at least looking or trying to learn, from another perspective, I think is very short-sighted of a lot of people. But I think also leads to the people who want to have the quote unquote conversations about the hard things aren't willing to listen. And when you're engaging in these conversations, they're not actually looking to converse with you or have their mind be changed even in the slightest. It usually is, I'm waiting for you to stop so I can then talk over to you and tell you how you're wrong. But I would assume that even in all of that, like you said, taking the time to listen to something, to see someone else's perspective, I think probably gives you more of a broader sense of why you do or don't believe in the things you do, because you're taking time to figure it out. And I think a lot of people kind of don't do that anymore, sadly.
That's a really great point that you're making. And if we're talking about things that matter, meaning what is it that is universal? What is it that is still the same as it was then in terms of the deepest things we care about? I do think you're right. I think being on the road, and some people may not know, so my wife, Corey, is also in Skillet. She plays guitar for Skillet. And we've been married for 27 years. We have 2 kids that we raised on the road. Yeah, thank you. So my kids are now 21 and 19. So I have 2 adult children, all right? And my kids grew up on the road, and they've gone to Europe with me. They've been around the world, and it does give you this. It opens your eyes to lots of different kinds of people and having conversations with people from all walks of life that see the world very, very differently. I think that was a great experience for them. I mean, it was for me as well, of course. But you begin to learn, like, okay, how do I have these, I think, as you said, inclusive conversations? Well, how do you see the world? And that's really interesting. I have found for me personally, since you took us there, John, this is your fault. We're talking about something that matters. I think for me personally, those conversations have made me more grounded in my belief in God than I would have been before, because you do have things challenged, and you start going, oh, so what is it in a world that is changing so rapidly? Because technology is changing so fast now. We really are, and we're just in this time where every 2 months something brand new, earth shaking feels like it's happened, and culture shifting, technology shifting. So I think what it's done for me is it's made me drill down and say, okay, if technology is changing, if the way I communicate with my friends are changing, if the world economic system is so quickly changing, everything is on the brink of turmoil. What is it for me that never, ever changes? Is there anything in life that is so stable that I can put my feet in it? You know, it's like concrete, and it's never, ever going to shift. And I have found that in my relationship with God. You know, the Bible says that, the flowers fade. All of a sudden, I forgot the scripture that I love so much. But it's basically saying the flowers fade, everything changes, but the word of God stands forever. And so I know there's probably a lot of people watching that don't share the same faith I do, which is absolutely fine. But when I read the Bible, I find this is wisdom, and I can put my feet in that, and it gives me such a concrete standing place that whatever the world has to bring, whether it's a pandemic or whether it's violence, or whether, you know, God forbid, it's another September 11, which nobody ever wants, and we don't want it, please, Lord. But whatever comes my way, we're going to be ready to tackle it because of that. So I've found that to be the case for me. But having conversations is pretty important, or you're never going to understand the world around you from other people's perspectives. It's hard to make friends that way, which probably is why, as you said, I think people don't have a lot of friends these days. I think that's why one of the reasons you see so much depression in our culture, and so many people are on meds of some sort. And I mean meds meaning for mental health and things like that. Part of it, I think, is because we don't have these flesh and blood conversations where you learn how to have a friend and learn how to be a friend, because that does a lot for you.
Well, I think a big thing for me was, and again, I think it's part of my age. Like, I know during a lot of that time, you know, I was very thankful I had already started this, because at least it kind of filled my social battery of feeling like I was engaging with somebody and kind of talking through anything.
Right.
Beyond, you know, like the people like my wife and I just sitting here, where after a while it's like, it's you again for the 170th day.
Yeah.
But I'm kidding, of course. Obviously, that's if you've been married for a while and live in the same house with your spouse, it kind of gets like that after a while at times, where you're just like, But
anybody in the whole world, man, locked down for months. Ooh, that's a recipe for bad stuff.
Yeah.
That's a bad brew.
But it was but it's a thing where, like, thinking about it, it was, now I've kind of lost my train of thought on that. But I think just as a whole, it's a thing where, you know, I think, like you said, if you are one that wants to seek out differing advice, seek out things just to kind of be more inquisitive, I think, you know, we have the ability to literally, like you said, look up anything. And that was where I was going to go. Doing this, you know, I had that ability to kind of recharge my battery socially and so forth. And I was very happy that I had this. But I'm also the same person that's going to probably FaceTime somebody versus just a text, or, you know, that I'm going to call you and be like, hey, do you want to hang out, you know, on whatever day? Because I'd rather have the one-on-one interaction. And it's not one of those that when we finally sit down and get together, we're all just on our phones anyway. It's like most everyone I'm hanging out with, phones are upside down, they're not out, we're all having a good time. And then a few hours goes by, and it's like, I don't know if that's my age, our age, of the people I'm hanging out with or whatever, but it's kind of sad that for as connected as we all seemingly are, we really are not. Because I also have this thought that it's like, I don't know if we're ever supposed to be connected to or know this many people at one given point in time. I think that there's probably some detriment there. Something else I did kind of want to bring up, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but I was just thinking as you were kind of talking about, you've had things you've said taken down for the appearance of being, spouting misinformation, whatever. I would almost wonder, I know that you've always been so strong in your faith and been very vocal about it over your whole career. I would posit, has that being a thing where some people would say, don't talk about these things. It could be damaging to your career. It could do all these hypothetical what ifs. Does that make you feel more, that's what I'm looking for, more that you believe so heartedly in what you're saying because you've already gone through, quote unquote, the fires and the flames of, speaking up against something that you believe so strongly in, that speaking your own mind, just your personal beliefs, doesn't feel as intimidating as it may be to other people?
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I think definitely when you know that you may lose a friend or followers or record sales or not get your song played on the radio, when you understand that that's the cost, and you say, I don't want to make people mad. I don't want to lose the friend. I don't want to hurt my career. This is my life. I love music. But I believe it so deeply that if that's what it's going to cost, then I got to put the cards on the table. And what happens, happens. When you count that cost and you're willing to do it, that's when you believe in something. Before then, it's just all talk. You know what I mean? It's all bluster. I'm going to do this. I would have said this. I would have done this. Yeah, okay. Are you willing to lose money? Are you willing to? You don't want to lose a friend, but if it cost you a friend, would you still do that? And so, yeah, I think that you definitely have to take it very seriously. And one of the tensions for me is this: like, I get tired of the vitriol. I get tired of people yelling. And that's the funny thing is, I don't even really post all that much on my social media. I don't spend my life on social media. I post like once a month, it seems like. But if I'm going to come out and say something I believe, if I think it's the tension of, I don't want to add to the noise, but if it's something I have to say, I got to say it. And I just think it's right. And so I do think you have to be solid in what you believe, and if you really want to go for it. And I think that really started for me really in 2020. I really did believe. Some people may disagree with this. No problem at all. I'm very open-minded and having friends that disagree with me. But I really did believe with all my heart, and I still believe that it was the right call, that we were on the edge of losing civil liberties. And I just thought, all right, what if we actually do lose these civil liberties? And I had a platform and I could have said something, but I didn't want to because I didn't want to be an alarmist, or I didn't want to make people mad or what have you. And I just couldn't take it anymore. I just thought, I'm going to have to say something about that because these things matter. These are bedrock issues. I personally do not believe that, for instance, the Constitution allows the state to lock me in my house for months and months and months at a time. I just don't think the Constitution allows that. And it certainly doesn't allow for the state to shut my church down while opening up a liquor store, for instance, or a casino or something like that. It doesn't have the right to do that. And it doesn't have the right to tell me that I can't say something that I want to say. That is not, obviously, I would never say something that's going to like incite violence or something like that. But those are the things I just thought, man, I have to say something about this. All of the mandates that were coming down, to get the jab and stuff. I just can't handle that stuff. The state doesn't have the power to do it. And if you give the state the power to do it, they are never, ever going, they're never, ever going to let go of their power. That's what I believe. And of course, I grew up in the 80s. I'm a little older than you. I grew up during the Cold War, and I saw a little bit what communism could do. I've been to Russia 12 times. I've toured Russia 12 times. I've been to the Ukraine 7 times. I've seen what communism can do. and that sort of massive amount of state fascism and things like that. And we do not want anything to do with that, you know? So I just felt you got to say these things and you got to stand them. And by the way, I remembered the verse that I love. I just want to quote it because I look like a moron for not knowing it earlier. The grass withers, the flowers fade, but the word of God stands forever. That has given me a lot of peace in my life.
Do you, I know it's technically when I'm supposed to be done. Do you have time for like one or two more questions real quick? Like quick ones?
Go for it, brother.
Okay. All right. So, Fight the Fury. It's been like 6 years since any music's come out. You know, I honestly would have felt like maybe, and I know like you're right in the beginning of a whole new Skillet, you know, album touring cycle. So I know it's not going to be something that's probably happening for a year or two down the road when the touring commitment is done. But it seems like it would be about time, you know, for some new music at this point. Is that something that's on the table? Sorry.
Right. Fight the Fury was my side project, which was really fun. COVID just kind of like smashed it because we were touring and it was going to be like a stair step. So I do think you're right. If we decide to get Fight the Fury going, it probably would be time to do that within the next year. And I honest to God don't know if we're going to do that or not. And we're so focused on Skillet and there's so much excitement around this new project. Also, some people may find interesting that this is our first independent project. We've been signed to Atlantic Records for 20 years. We just ended that. And this is our first project we've ever done on our own. So we're also like, it's like giddy up time, man. We're like, giddy up, let's go do this thing. Because it just feels so, it's not really rebranding, but I feel like we're starting again. Maybe it's because of the independent thing and just got to make the record we wanted to make without a bunch of, not being rude to anybody else, but without a bunch of cooks in the kitchen. And it's kind of nice just going, I'm ready to run. And I don't want anybody holding my reins, man. And so we made the record we wanted to make. The record is killer. People can go and you can pre-save it now. The record's called Revolution. And the songs, I think, are really catchy and really good. So I'm so focused on it. I can honestly say I don't know what's going to happen with Fight the Fury, but I really appreciate you asking me because almost nobody asked me about it.
Well, it's one of those things where I feel like a lot of artists are so, you know, I talk about it's not even a duality. It's kind of like the three lives you live of past, present, future, where you're living the life that's creating whatever you're inspiring to write now. We'll hear it in the future, but then once you're done with it, you have to kind of traverse back to when you made all this stuff and then rehash where you were doing these things. So you're never really ever present in one situation in your life. You're kind of traversing all three planes at once. So to me, I know that you're probably maybe had been sitting on other material. We're kind of sifting through when starting the new project or the new record. Might have been like, well, I know that was a Fight the Fury thing, but I kind of think it fits with what we're doing now because I know that people do that. So to me, I could see there being a thing where you're like, okay, I kind of found something that was Fight the Fury related. I'm going to come back to that soon. But like you said, obviously now the focus is Skillet, but it's just one of those things I could see there being a thing where you're like, it's been long enough and it didn't really get the fair shake it deserves. So let's kind of maybe start thinking about that because I know you guys have to start blocking off festivals next year and you're always looking at least 5 to 6 months ahead. So, and that'll kind of be my last question for you. You know, I always think it's funny, like I said, the life of a record where by the time we as fans are getting it, you have already lived with it for anywhere from a year or more, waiting for all of these things to fall in place. Now that the record is about a month away from everyone hearing it, what are you most excited to finally have everyone hear off of this record?
Yeah. Well, thanks for doing the interview. I really appreciate it, by the way, and talking about the record and so much other fun stuff. It's been a really great interview. This is the first project, because what you just said is absolutely accurate, except for this project, because we did it ourselves. We only finished the record like 6 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
Because we were able to like put it out at our own speed, which is really, maybe that's why I feel so fiery about it. Like I said, we're ready to it's fresh. And I think that the songs are very poignant. I mean, I wouldn't mind just saying very quickly what the album's about. It's called Revolution. So what does that mean? Revolution is not political. It is not militaristic, of course. It's nothing like that. It's saying we need a revolution of love and compassion and communication and spirituality. As we talked earlier, I think we just create a culture where people don't know that they matter. As you said, they earlier talking about FaceTiming instead of texting. Hey, let's meet up. Can we meet up for dinner? Can we meet up for coffee? Come hang out and watch the game. We're in a time when people don't. I really think 2020 really made this even worse. People just got used to living on their phones, and they're not in relationship, and they don't know that their lives matter. And I think people are suffering from it. And I care deeply about teenagers. I don't know how many people know this, but we have the highest rate of teen suicide in recorded American history. It is really not going good. And I wanted to make a record that was saying, hey, we got to wake up, and we have to do a better job at talking to one another and loving each other and standing up for the things we believe in. We talked about the lowest common denominator. How do I love my neighbor? And if I treat you that way, then maybe you could treat me that way, and we could live together in peace and really, as cheesy as it sounds, make the world a better place. And we need that desperately. So the songs on the record are really catchy, but this is a revolution. It's really a revolution of love, man. It's saying we need something brand new. We got to go away from what we are doing. I think people are going to hear it. I think they're going to feel it's very positive. It's encouraging, but it rocks. It's a hard album. And it's got some of those Fight the Fury elements in it too. There's a song on the record called Not Afraid. Can't wait for people to hear it. It's got like all the technical guitar stuff that Fight the Fury had, maybe like a touch of like Avenged Sevenfold, older Avenged in theirs and stuff like that. I think people are going to really love the record. So everybody go check it out, skillet.com, and pre-save the new record. The new song's called Unpopular, and hopefully people dig it.
And you guys are starting your tour with Seether in about, what, two days as of when we're recording? So you'll be out on the road supporting the record. Right.
It's time. Let's get this thing done.
Well, hopefully, I'll say this tour doesn't come here to Michigan, but hopefully the next one will, and maybe we can do another one of these, talk a little bit more about the record and some other things. If you have time. So enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat, and looking forward to everyone finally getting to hear this album and getting to see you guys live.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Peace, brother.
So that was my conversation with John. Want to thank him once again for taking the time and doing this chat, for opening up and sharing memories of, where he was for 9/11, how it affected him, how it affected the band. I think that's sort of a thing that a lot of us don't kind of remember. And I have such a weird memory of not only 9/11 because I was a senior in high school and it did affect a lot of things just like it did for a lot of us. But from a musical side, I also remember this just being a weird time where, like POD had just come out with Satellite, but like Boom wasn't allowed on the radio. Alive wasn't really, big. But then it was kind of weird because the singles that were taken away from them, they then catapult with Youth of the Nation, which sort of becomes the anthem of recovery and, just kind of coming together in, the awful experience that happened to all of us and the lives lost and everything. But, it's also interesting to remember, for me, Jay-Z's Blueprint record had come out and I really wanted it for my birthday and I had to keep waiting because stores were closed, just a lot of things were happening. So it's like, as I think of that, just from like songs being taken off the radio, videos being taken off MTV, and different things like that, like just how things were changing instantly because of this event. How did it look for someone maybe that's, in Skillet's case, a few years into their career? They're probably playing out, they're probably looking at some shows or whatever, and just the uncertainty of, well, now what? How do we do this now? And obviously I don't think we really got into it, but, discussing even flights and stuff like that, like what can you fly with? That would be something that would actually be interesting. I should kind of look into that a little bit more. How strict were the flight policies with like your carry-on for gear for bands and such? Like, I would imagine it was already kind of bad with some of the stuff that we have to do just as regular people flying with our checked bags and everything else. But what was it like if you're bringing, a pedal board or something with you? Like, was it extra tough to like travel with that when you had fly dates, or, you know, if you had to fly to wherever to go do your tour. Like I never thought to ask that either. But there was also a bit of a through line I realized when listening to the band's latest album, Revolution, which I forgot to mention in the intro. It's out now. It's been out for about a month as of when you're listening to this. And more to the point, unpopular. Like I kind of realized with John being such an outspoken person on his social media and on his own podcast and so forth, and I'm sure you have seen all the headlines that John has made over the years. However you feel about that is however you feel about that, but there is something to be said about someone who isn't afraid to kind of speak their mind, ask questions, and do all those kind of things. And to me, I felt like there was sort of a parallel and a through line through all of it between, you know, the events of 9/11 and kind of what Unpopular is talking about as far as sort of the unrest we seem to kind of be in as a culture, as a world, where there's a lot of fighting, there's a lot of people saying, you should do this, you should do that, you should be this, you should be that, and, you know, finding your own voice and finding your own way to do something, whether it's popular or not. And in such divided times, I feel like that was sort of the same thing back then. I remember it was just, there was such a division of us as people, and it was kind of interesting to look back. I mean, man, 22 years ago, this event happened. So to hear the song Unpopular and to really kind of delve into what John's talking about, you kind of realize, like, we're sort of right back where we were to a degree with all the infighting and a lot of things. And I mean, how does that old saying go? The more things change, the more they stay the same. So I don't know, just kind of interesting when you notice these like little through lines at times and just kind of wonder, is it all connected in some way, shape, or form? All that said, let's start wrapping up this episode. If you would like to keep up with Skillet, you can go to skillet.com. If you want to go find them on Facebook, Skillet. Instagram, Skillet Music. Twitter, Skillet Music. If you like to keep up with John, you can find him on Instagram and Twitter at John L. Cooper, or go to johnlcooper.com for all the latest going-ons with what he's got going on. The band is pretty much done touring for the rest of this year. They're doing a few festival dates, and then basically they are kicking off the Winter Jam 25 tour, which starts on January 10th in Columbia, South Carolina, and goes all the way through the U.S. and ends on March 23rd in Nashville, Tennessee. So if they are hitting your city or are coming close, go check it out and support. Tickets, I think, are only like $15. That was one of the things that's always kind of interesting about that tour is it's very, very, very cost efficient for families and such to go. I know it's pretty much always sold out when it comes through here, and it's coming through here once again. So go support the guys and gals in the band. And if you would like to keep up with the podcast, you can do such at BrewSpeakPod on all your social media platforms. Email me at BrewtallySpeaking@gmail.com. A few of you have been doing that lately, continuing on conversations from the episodes, as well as some guest suggestions. So it's been greatly appreciated, as well as the DMs and so forth. So continue to do that. It's much appreciated on my end. Lets me know you're listening and enjoying. Rating, review, and subscribing also let people know that you're enjoying the show. You know why it's important. Do it on whatever platform you were able to do such from. That is greatly appreciated as well. And massive thanks to Rockabilia. Head on over to rockabilia.com. Check out their hundreds of thousands of items in their online store. The holidays are coming. Pick up something for a loved one, or pick up something for yourself. I mean, who knows you and what you want better than you? So head on over there, use our code BREWtally at checkout, take 10% off your total purchase order, and save some money this holiday season while picking up some great band merch, or like I've been saying, just because I can't believe in 2024 this is still a thing. But lava lamps. I think my favorite was someone on the Rockabilia Instagram story the other day posted that they got their ghost clock and they called it a Glock, and I thought that was real funny. So it's been a thing where just seeing people, mainly the ghost community, coming up with really funny words for the merch items. Like I think still, I might be saying it wrong, but ghoulie shorts or goody shorts or something like that for the ghost booty shorts was really fucking funny to me. So head on over there. They are collaborating with so many great bands, new bands, up and coming bands, established bands that you know. Go check it out. And again, use the code BREWtally at checkout. Let them know that we're sending you and saving you some money. And for the Brewtally Speaking podcast, I am John, and I will see you all next week where I have Brandon Saller returning of Atreyu. We discuss a lot of things going on in the Atreyu camp, as well as looking back at 20 years of the curse. That was a fun one. I'll see you all then. Enjoy the rest of your holiday weekend. I'll talk to you all next time.